It's so wonderful to connect with you guys because IHN is truly where it all started for me. And I have no idea where I'd be in my life without it, to be perfectly honest. It was really the catalyzing year that led to everything. And yeah, I was just saying to Elizabeth before you guys came in that I have this very distinct memory of sitting in Elizabeth's office and kind of nervously looking through her alumni binder and wondering what was in store for me and like really hoping that I would get in. And I had just spent a year working on an organic farm and eating just what we were growing there. And my life physically, emotionally, spiritually had changed so dramatically. And coming to IHN was really me trying to understand what had happened to my body and my mind through food. Like, how did food transform me in this way? And I remember sitting in Elizabeth's office and just thinking, wow, I think I'm really going to finally understand the power that food has. And I certainly did. And I've built a career on that. So I'm excited to share my journey with you.
Yes. And we are so excited to have you with us here, Sarah. So with no further ado, everyone, we would like to introduce Britton. And she is an incredible inspiration to all of us. Sarah graduated from IHN in 2007. She is here today to share her story and pathway to a thriving holistic health business. Sarah will talk about her experiences with clinical practice, her decision to focus on blogging, food photography, recipe development, cookbook creation, and an online wellness platform, including her brand partnerships, global retreats, breathwork, and more. Always inspired by nature and food, with a vision to bring people a little closer to their food and to their bodies, Sarah offers a very unique and creative perspective about where an IHN education can take you. Okay, let's welcome Sarah Britton.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. I'm really happy to be here today. It's a real honor to be speaking, to be on this side. I mean, who would have thought all those years ago? So thanks for joining us. I am so happy to share my story with you today, and I hope that it gets you excited about the path that you're on, because it absolutely changed my life and gave me a really clear direction. And we're going to do a Q&A at the end, but I'm going to leave 15 to 20 minutes for that, because I feel, as much as I love sharing my story, I know I'm probably going to miss things that are, maybe could be useful to you. So I'm really happy to answer any and all questions at the end. So yeah, I think off the top, I just want to say that there is no one size fits all path forward when you leave IHN. And when you become a holistic nutritionist, there are so many different avenues you can take. And, that's both personally and professionally. And I think that's the really exciting thing about IHN and its interdisciplinary nature. You get a little bit of everything. And looking back, I can see the things that really stuck out for me. The big one was actually Eva Kabaka's cooking class. And at the time, of course, I didn't really know what was happening, other than we were applying everything that we'd learned to the physical world and actually making food. And that was definitely a seed that was planted in my soul. I just felt like, gosh, when you can understand what food does in the body, how certain ingredients work synergistically together, and how we can use that knowledge to make food that is nourishing on another level to people. And that's just such an exciting approach, especially if you do want to go the path of recipe development, cookbook writing, even working in professional kitchens. That skill set, having that knowledge, is going to be so invaluable, because very few people, even today, approach food from that way. And what was so cool for me is when I started working in professional kitchens and with Michelin star level chefs, the way I was able to sort of suggest to them, well, if you put a little bee pollen on top of this, like, it's really going to change the nutrient profile. Or if you swap out this cooking fat that you're using for this, people are going to leave here feeling really good. And so anyway, this is all to say that what you're learning is so important and so valuable to the world, and there's so many different ways you can take it. So I hope you leave here today feeling like, oh gosh, the world of possibilities is just so wide open, and it's really exciting. The world definitely needs more holistic nutritionists, in my opinion, and people who, not only want to care for themselves, but others. And yeah, I just feel so strongly about it. So when I left IHN, I was actually working part-time, and I started seeing clients on the side because I wanted to dip my toe in. One of the big things that was emphasized there was you might not feel totally ready when you leave, but it's important to start somewhere. And clinical practice, although it didn't feel 100% aligned, I really wanted to see what it was like to see clients on a regular basis, to develop these relationships and connections, and then start to build out a client base from there. The professional practice class actually gave me such an amazing foundation of both branding and marketing, and trying to figure out what my niche was, which is actually something I've carried through to today. So in the professional practice class, I named my business New Roots. And when I left IHN, I discovered that was like actually a registered herbal medicine brand. So when I was registering my name for the blog, I typed in my new roots, and it wasn't about me. It was it was about the person typing that in for themselves, in the hopes that they would, begin to think about food in a different way, begin to think about a new beginning for them, and strengthening themselves from the roots with this nourishment. So I started seeing some clients. It was incredibly challenging at the beginning, just because I felt so green and inexperienced. And it's a lot when you're dealing with people, especially who have chronic conditions. Typically holistic nutrition is the last resort for a lot of people. And I think, it was a bit daunting actually to sit across from someone who was chronically ill and, develop a program for them. As we know, the greatest strength and greatest weakness of holistic nutrition is addressing people on a bio-individual level, and not just saying, well, you have a headache, so here's the Tylenol. It's, you have a headache, let's get to the root of it. Let's figure out what's really going on underneath the surface. And that means that everyone in a room of 100 people could have a headache for a different reason. And so that's really what the big challenge is. And if you are a bit of a sleuth and you feel like really digging, I think that's an amazing path. And of course, the world really needs more people in clinical practice for that, because I think it's so important that we educate individuals on what's really good for them and what works for them. Again, bringing individuality back into it. That's really essential. So seeing clients on the side, I was also, in the background, really like doing all these weird food experiments. I had kombucha brewing in my kitchen. I was fermenting a bunch of stuff. Basically every day, all I could think about was food and when the next time I could get back in the kitchen was. And it was almost distracting to me. And I didn't realize at the time it was kind of the universe saying, this is what you should be focusing on. So I started a blog called My New Roots, which again was from IHN. And it was mostly lifestyle. I was talking about dry skin brushing, or I would feature a specific ingredient. I remember one of my first posts was about quinoa. And again, this was like a long time ago, everybody. Quinoa had just come on the scene. It was like, had never been heard of. Everyone was calling it quinoa. It was those days. And it was really just me writing into the ether. I had no idea who was reading it. I had no idea who the commenters were. I mean, the very few that there were, but it was a really good way for me to keep on top of the latest, health innovations and research coming out. I had such a passion for sharing what I had learned because, gosh, I would go to a party or see friends and they would just start picking my brain about, again, nutrition, how their bodies worked, what food would be best for them for this. And I thought, I just need to spread the word about this. And luckily it turned into something. But in 2007, blogging was really in its infancy, and I didn't have anyone really to look up to in any sense. It was really just me. I had a point and shoot camera. I did have Photoshop skills at the time, so I could kind of understand editing photos on some level. But again, blogging was really so much about writing. It was not a visual platform. And so I would write about, I would take excerpts from my textbooks from IHN and really start to formulate these, like I call it water cooler talk. So, if someone reads it, they can stand at the water cooler at work and say to their friend, like, hey, did you know that sesame seeds have more calcium than milk, for instance? And that was really fun. And so I was seeing clients while I was building this blog out. But again, it was just a passion project. It was really just for me and like whoever in the universe happened to have fallen into it. And I was on Blogspot at the time. And I think a lot of people found me because there was a little arrow in the corner on the top right. And if you clicked it, it would just take you to a random blog somewhere else in the world. And I think that's how the majority of the people found me. And then, of course, word of mouth came about. One thing I realized pretty early on was that the photography was really important. And I think understanding that and also concurrently developing more of a niche and a brand, which is another thing that we did in professional practice. I scrapped what I had originally built and created something different, still under the My New Roots name. But from a branding standpoint, I think I have to say this is a really, really important thing to do, even now at this stage where you are in school, because I think that more you can hone that vision you have for yourself and really figure out, okay, what am I passionate about? And what's the thing that separates me from other people? What makes me special and unique? Because there is absolutely room for everybody in this field. I think it's just essential that you really get clear on the thing that you really love, like what lights you up, because the thing about clinical practice was it just didn't light me up personally. And so I think there was friction there. And because of that, I just wasn't that passionate about pursuing it. And again, with anything you want to pursue, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be quite aggressive and know what you want. And so as soon as I sort of locked into that, I knew I wanted to deal with food. I knew I wanted to be educating people around specific ingredients and what they did in the body and how they worked and best ways of cooking them. And that's how my recipe development really started. I felt like there was so much magic that could happen in the kitchen. You could lay out the same 5 ingredients and do a million different things with them. And even though I had absolutely no experience, I felt, like I said before, almost distracted by food and recipe development and finding ways of expressing myself through the food. I should also mention that I have a background in fine arts. I'm a painter and photographer, and the photography aspect was really important in pulling people into your world. And so if you're not a photographer, luckily there's amazing cameras these days that don't take a lot of, yeah, they're pretty simple to use. And phones now, I mean, I just got the latest iPhone and it's incredible. I can't believe the quality. I wish that had been around when I was starting out. But these things I talk about because I think from a visual standpoint, especially if you're going to be dealing in the online space, you really need to, yeah, create a very clear look. And again, it's been so much easier in recent years with, I don't know, everyone sort of having their own look. So you can define really what works for you and what makes you feel good. And yeah, it's important through both the imagery and also your branding, colorways, like all these things stay really consistent because, man, there's people out there who are just, yeah, it's really slick these days. And I say it just because it's not a trivial thing. It's really important that you get that dialed in and make something that lights you up and makes you happy. And, that a space, maybe a space online or social media that makes you feel good and happy. And that really reflects who you are and your skill set and your brand and yeah, your vibe. That's key. So, yeah, the recipe development, that really led to working in restaurants. Again, this is such a roundabout kind of tale I have. I met a really wonderful man, a Danish man, on the street in New York City one day, and we fell in love very quickly. And we did long distance for a while, but I ended up moving to Copenhagen. So I was there for 9 years. And when I first got there, I really had no idea what to do with my life. I had just left. I just graduated essentially from IHN and was really passionate about holistic nutrition in some way. I wasn't sure about clinical practice, But I found out quite quickly that that job doesn't exist in Denmark. And so you can't get insurance to practice. And so I really needed to figure out a way of putting that skill set to good use in another way. And again, this like food and cooking just kept poking at me. And so I decided to apply at some restaurants and see if they would accept a totally green cook who had zero experience. And luckily, one place did, which was amazing. And it was this tiny little cafe. There was no menu. It was up to the two chefs every day to make the full spread from scratch without any kind of guidelines, really. And that was terrifying to me because I could follow directions really well and I could definitely follow a recipe, but making them up on the spot every day felt absolutely so daunting. And we had from 8 a.m. to 12 to basically make 12 dishes, and that would be the lunch. And yeah, the first week or two, I literally fell asleep immediately when I got home. I remember just crashing. I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was so exhausted, both physically and mentally, just from coming up with all these ideas. But quite quickly realized that I had a skill here, and that was being able to look at ingredients and figure out how they would go together and in what way and what cooking technique would be best. Although there's no wrong answer, of course. But it was through practicing that. It was looking at, looking in the fridge at a crate of vegetables and feeling like just almost allowing it to tell me what it wanted to do. I kind of joke that I am a vegetable whisperer, but I do hear what they say to me. And I definitely feel almost more like a channel than someone in control of it. I really do love to listen to the vegetables, and they're never wrong. So this experience of going in every day, sussing out what we had, creating recipes, doing that day in, day out, 5 or 6 days a week, was the best boot camp for learning how to cook. And the cool thing was, and the part where it really made me realize I was making an impact, was that people kept coming back and they knew what days I was working and they would come back specifically to eat the food. And some of the feedback was, usually when I eat here, or usually when I go down the street to eat, like I feel like really exhausted after, I don't have a lot of energy, or I have brain fog, but your food made me feel so good. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to this food that's making it feel so nourishing? And yeah, it was because of my education. I knew that certain foods would pair well with others from a flavor standpoint, from a nutritional standpoint. And it was really cool to see the results, that it wasn't just a fluke, but it was many, many people coming back over and over saying, wow, I just felt so amazing after that meal. And, thank you. And, I didn't realize I could feel so good. That was really amazing. And then through that experience, I started working my way up through the restaurant industry in Copenhagen, and sort of one by one, made it all the way up to Noma's Nordic Food Lab. And this was at the time when Noma was the best restaurant in the world. So it was a very, very exciting time to be there. I got to work on a project. Actually, one dinner took 4 months to make, not cooking, of course, but the conceptualization and the recipe development. And that was a real highlight of my career for sure, was working with literally the best chef in the world, and in a beautiful environment, and very slowly crafting a meal that would be, remembered forever. And it was totally vegan, and that was a first for them. It's one of the reasons I came onto that project in the first place, because they wanted it to be plant-based. And it was really humbling. And the other thing it showed me was that I am definitely not meant to work in professional kitchens. So in fact, that was my last stint in a professional kitchen, was there. The fast pace, the stress, the energy of it just wasn't for me. I actually really preferred working in my little cafe, making raw food, lasagna and things like that. I was right before I went to the Nordic Food Lab, I was head chef at a raw food restaurant in Copenhagen. It was one of the first ones there. When raw food came to Denmark, it was just like a revolution. It was very, very exciting and cool to be a part of that as well. But I really realized physically it was too demanding for me. And so it was a turning point for me. I felt like I'd sort of reached the peak of what I had set out to. And at that point, it was really time to look at how can I develop my business? Because at that time I was still blogging, but I was working full time. I was working in 3 different restaurants at the same time. I was managing one of them and head chefing at the other. And it was so crazy. And my wonderful husband said, this isn't really sustainable, both from a time perspective, but also just physically. I was so exhausted. And he said, what do you want to do? And I really felt like at that point I had learned enough about cooking and recipe development that I wanted to teach. And coincidentally, not coincidentally, a few weeks later, I got an email from someone in Amsterdam who was a production manager. And she really wanted to have me come to Amsterdam and host me and have me teach cooking classes. And that was really exciting. So I said yes and hopped on a plane, got down there. It was so amazingly set up. And I ended up hiring her full time to be my manager. Her name was Samantha. And we, for the next, 7 or 8 years, we went all over the world. I taught cooking classes and she did all the back end organizing and production management, which was fantastic. And I really saw how much I needed help to do it. I had put one cooking class on in Copenhagen. It was $15 and I was too cheap to take a taxi. So I put everything, all the cooking equipment, ingredients in a giant suitcase, took it on the bus, and then the handle broke because it was too heavy. And I was such a memory. I haven't talked about this in a while, but yeah, I just remember lugging it down the street thinking, gosh, it would be really nice if I had a hand with this. But anyway, I got through my own cooking class. But yeah, wow, having help was huge. So that's another piece of advice I would love to just interject with right now. You'll get to a certain point when you really realize you can't do it alone. And that's why it's so important to delegate and to find the right people to support you. It's not a failure. It's really going to take you to the next level. I have the most amazing coworker now, Caitlin, co-pilot, as I call her, and she supports me in everything I do. And yeah, I think when you get up into a certain point in your career, or if you want to jump to the next level, you just really have to surrender to that fact. You just can't do everything. You can try, but you'll end up, the work-life balance seems to suffer there. So I really recommend that. So after the cooking classes got rolling and Samantha and I were touring the globe, I started retreats. And this was before I started my retreat business, which is called Golden Circle Retreats. I was just doing them under the My New Roots brand. And it was great. We were all over the place. It was really fun. Yeah, I met so many incredible people and had some really phenomenal experiences. I really loved the retreats because what they focus on is cooking and nutrition, but also movement and connection to nature and stillness and solitude and just slowing down. And I think people really need that these days. So that was, yeah, I really felt like that was another avenue that I could go down. We'll circle back to that. I got a cookbook deal. I guess it was a few years after I started teaching cooking classes, and I'd had 17 offers in my inbox before I said yes to one of them. And I went with Random House in the US under the imprint Clarkson Potter, and they specialize in cookbooks. I really got an amazing agent for that. Another piece of advice, if you want to get into cookbook development, recipe development, and writing, then hire an agent. Yeah, you can easily find them with a Google search. But the best thing to do is just ask fellow authors who they've worked with. And the reason that's important is because the agent really works as a go-between you and your publisher. And without going into too much detail about that, you and your publisher have to have a very good relationship, and things can often get strained due to, creative differences. And, you're both working for different things. They're working for the bottom line and you're working to pour your heart into something, and there can be friction there. So it's just great in terms of negotiating contracts and also putting out fires. That's really, really key. So again, this stems back to getting help and getting a team together, people that you might work with temporarily or for the long term. But again, just having people to help support you in what you want to do is essential. It's really hard when you're so close to the painting all the time, sort of get a clear view of things. And having a team really does help with that. So for a first-time author, it was pretty unheard of, but I got a 2-book deal. And that was also really daunting. I was 4 months pregnant when I signed that deal. And I got most of the first book done before my son was born. But I had to write the second one through breastfeeding and book touring the first book. And it was a very wild time. I feel really lucky that I got through it. But I won't lie, it was actually probably the most stressful time of my life professionally and personally. I mean, with a new baby and everything. And I was just coming into motherhood and under a lot of pressure with work. So yeah, it was something. But what just like such an incredible privilege to be able to write a book or two. And the reason we decided to go with the 2-book deal, it was my literary agent and we discussed it for a while, and we could get just more of an advance, and we would be really locked into the partnership with the publisher, which is important. So, and usually when you sign with the publisher, it's a huge decision because that can be the rest of your career with them. If all goes well, of course, sometimes things change, but that's sort of the goal, is that you find the perfect fit and then they will be with you for your entire writing career. And that's amazing. So it was a huge honor to be aligned with Random House because they're one of the world's leading publishing companies. And yeah, it was, gosh, that whole process was incredible. It takes about a year to write a book and about 6 to 12 months for edits and then developing the marketing plan and all that stuff. So yeah, those years where I wrote both books were very full. And I mean, I just have 2 products that I'm so proud of. And it's still humbling to this day to go into someone's house and see one of my books or both books on their shelf. I hope that they're totally stained and dog-eared and have been well loved. It's just such an honor and such a trip that, my books are in 9 languages. They're in their 3rd printing now, and that people literally all over the world are cooking my recipes. And I think that connection and that community that I feel is really what keeps me going, is knowing that people all over the world are nourishing themselves and that we are connected through food. Even though we've never met, it's so humbling to know that people are out there, making my soup and my cookies and whatever else. It's really amazing. So after the cookbooks, I decided to return again to this retreat idea. So I started my business called Golden Circle Retreats, and we've been in several countries at this point. And I co-created the curriculum with my friend Mikola Marilyn Kesey, who has her own platform. It's called Living Pilates, and it's a movement system that she's developed herself, which is a combination of yoga, Pilates, dance, meditation, and breathwork. And I took one class with her in Copenhagen and asked her if she wanted to collaborate, which is really wild because it's a lot to work with somebody. And gosh, I got a vibe immediately from her and felt very comfortable. And luckily it all worked out. We collaborated in such a seamless way. And the first retreat was truly magical. We did it in Bali. We had 22 participants and from all over the world. It sold out also in just a couple of days, which was a really cool thing to see. And we had a blast. It impacted people on a level that we just never anticipated. We still get emails from people who've done the retreats, even years later, that have said, that was the catalyst that changed my life. And here we thought we were just going to bring women out into a beautiful setting, away from technology, away from their day-to-day demands, especially moms, and feed them really nourishing food, get them to move their bodies, get them to pay attention to how they're feeling, get them out of their heads and into their physical selves. And who knew it could be so impactful? But of course it was. So we took that model and we ran with it, and we've been doing retreats every year since then, except for the years during COVID, of course. So it was a real treat last year to return. We have a spot in Mexico that we really enjoy called Xinalani, which is just outside of Puerto Vallarta. And it's a beautiful eco retreat space. You can't take a car to it. You have to take a boat. So it's very exclusive and it's very yeah, cloistered away. It feels, I mean, it's a paradise. It's right on the ocean, the jungle, and you're sleeping in these beautiful open cabins and yeah, falling asleep to the sound of the waves. It's amazing. And yeah, it's the best job ever. I think that's the work that I'm most proud of just because I get to see the impact it has on people right away. When people are leaving and they say, wow, this has really changed my perspective on some things. And this week I've been able to get a lot of clarity on what I want moving forward in my life. And the real goal is to give people the tools they need to, again, know how to cook for themselves, to understand what their bodies need, both physically and emotionally and spiritually. Mikola is an amazing instructor, and our work both really focused on traditional Chinese medicine and those practices and theories. So we sort of interweave through our classes, respective classes, the teaching. So people really come away with a deeper understanding of how their systems work, and then how they can move forward, how they can share that with their families back home, and how, yeah, I guess just understanding how that ripple effect kind of goes out from these individuals that come to the retreat is so amazing. And often people will go home and quit their job, and they'll sell everything they own and get a van and or drive across the country or whatever. We've just gotten some wild stories from people from their experiences at the retreat. So I really love doing those. We're going to Mexico again in January, and we're going to Italy in May of 2024. And then there's some very exciting places in the works for 2025. So that's fantastic. I'm so passionate about that work and love connecting with people in person. I feel like that's where I really thrive. I love human beings. I love meeting people. I love seeing who this community is out in the ether, but for us to be able to come together. And I also think there's something really, really magical that happens when women get together in circle. And a lot of these women have never sat in a group and talked about how they feel before. So there's lots of opportunities for that as well. And yeah, I think that also adds to the impact for sure, is feeling that support network and that connection and that community is very strong at the retreats. And it goes on forever. People form lifelong friendships at these. And that means a lot to me too. Just knowing that we can bring people together with like minds and we can bridge these gaps. And even though they might be on opposite sides of the world from each other, that they are so connected in their hearts. It's so beautiful to see. So one thing that my husband actually noticed about the retreats, because the demand was so high, but we'd get emails from people saying either they can't afford the time off work, or the ticket price is too expensive, which I totally understand. It is a lot of money. His idea was to build an online platform where people could come and almost have like a retreat in their own home. So he called it Grow. He called it My New Roots Grow, which is brilliant. And this was 8 years ago. And he luckily, again, I'm very lucky to have someone sort of in tech who understands backend and coding and all this stuff. So he built the wireframes for the site, which in essence was going to be the Netflix of wellness, and primarily cooking classes and recipes. But I also wanted to expand into movement. So I have Mikola's videos on there. We have interviews with some of the leading wellness practitioners in the world, but it also goes into food producers, environmentalists, people working in agriculture. And I focus a lot on women. It's mostly women or womb owners that are in Grow. Just, yeah, I really want to lift those people up, give them a voice. And yeah, my co-pilot, Caitlin, we built Grow during the pandemic, which was a great time, to be honest. We really just put our heads down and got to work, and we created something that's so amazing. And I'm really excited to share that all of you watching and beyond will get, we have 3 tiers actually. We have Seed, Sprout, and Blossom. And you're all getting Blossom. You can get Blossom for just $2 a month. So $15 off for your first month if you want to go in and check it out. So we'll put the details in there. Caitlin will share in the chat about that, and she'll put the code in there as well, so you can take note of that. So yeah, Grow is really an interdisciplinary space where, yeah, if you don't know how to cook beans or rice, you can learn that, but you can also learn how to, brew your own kombucha or plant garlic or grow your own lettuce. There's a whole gardening section. And then more recently, I became certified to teach breathwork because that's really changed my life as a practice. And so I decided to become a facilitator so that I could teach that. So that's also been added to grow at the Blossom level. So I hope you guys can check that out. If you've never tried breathwork before, I think it's a great place to start. We've got several sessions in there now, from, the really out there, hour-long sessions to just short, quick ones that you can use either start your day or end your day. And it's an offering that I'm really proud of because, it's helped me heal my body. It's really helped me transform my life. And it's such a beautiful practice to share. So I hope to see some of you in a live class sometime. That would be amazing. But in the meantime, I hope that you can check out Grow and use that resource. So that's sort of what's going on with me now. I have actually met with my Canadian book editor last week because I'm writing another book. And so that's very exciting. I'm actually going to start writing my proposal tomorrow. And after such a long hiatus from writing, I'm really looking forward to getting back into that because I feel, and some of you may know this, but I've changed my diet in the last year, and I really have a different perspective on what I had previously thought. And it's also really helped me heal my body. I had a pretty severe back injury that needed surgery, and I have successfully avoided that, which is incredible. And again, it's like the power of food. Of all the things I was trying, that was the one I was most resistant to, because I built a brand and a personal identity around the way I was eating. And we'll also say that's a kind of a dangerous thing to do. So even though I was very moderate and never really in the black and white category, I can see how my audience really had feelings about it, and that's okay. It's my body. But it's been really cool to see how that shift for me has really helped improve my health. And I'm excited to write a book about that. I won't give too many more details. I don't think I'm allowed to, but I'm really excited. The book's really going to focus on just absolute deliciousness, a very non-restrictive approach, very flexible, but still very much me, very local and seasonally focused. I'm not sure how I'm going to structure the book yet. I was thinking about going month by month maybe, but then I think we're getting into some restrictive energy. So we'll see. I trust the unfolding of that one, and I'm excited to put pen to paper tomorrow and really start to flesh out what this looks like and the direction I want to take it. And I just am so grateful for anyone who's ever supported me through the purchase of a book. And I'm excited that there's more to come. And grateful for the audience. I'm so grateful to do what I do. And if the internet didn't exist, I don't know where I would be. It's amazing that we can, just by, taking this year or two that you're taking to learn this, you have access to literally the entire world of audience, which is so phenomenal. And so it gives you so much opportunity. So I just encourage you to find what it is that you really get excited about. And it may not even be something you feel fits or can be adapted to what you've learned. Just look a little bit deeper, because there's definitely something there. And again, when you're doing something you love, it just doesn't feel like work. I can't tell you how many hours I've poured into this without income just because I want to. And someone asked me the other day if, when would I ever retire? I'm like, I don't think I will. I'll probably be doing this, way up into my 70s and 80s and 90s, maybe, just because it's a passion. So I think that's the best advice I can give in terms of career sustainability, because if you don't love it, it's just going to feel hard. And of course, there's always going to be things you do that are tedious and boring. That's life. But ultimately, figure out what really just like makes you sparkle inside. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. And that's going to really give you the fuel to keep going. And connections are really important. Make all the connections you can. Be open to meeting people from all different walks of life. You never know what they're going to offer and how they're going to come back into your life. I can't tell you how many times. Yeah, someone I met at a book signing 8 years ago has like come back in and they've helped me with this or that and the other thing. It's really, really cool. I had a woman at a cooking class in Lisbon say she was an amazing editor, and she said, if you ever need anything edited, please look me up. And a couple of years later, I'd written an ebook and I sent it to her, and she was like, I'm so glad you wrote me. I can't wait to do this. And she worked for free. She just really wanted to like be a part of the universe. And gosh, what a humbling and touching thing. So yeah, and she remains a really good friend to this day. Yeah, stay really curious and yeah, just really connected to your purpose. I think that's so key. So finding out what that is will really help you define your niche. It's going to help you hone your brand. Again, the look and aesthetic, I know it sounds a little superficial, but it's really key, especially in differentiating yourself from others, because the market is really saturated. So it's like, what makes you special? What's the thing that separates you from other people? And I think another thing I'll say is that the people that are in your field are not your competition. The more people that are doing what you're doing means that it's a thing that's really in demand. So look at your fellow students right now as colleagues as you move forward, because you're really going to need each other. It's the community. I still keep in touch with my classmates, and we're all in really different places, but it's just so beautiful to have that connection and to be, connecting with one another and asking each other questions, and the support, because you're choosing a very different path than most people, and that's very brave and very amazing. And so it just means that keeping close ties with the people that you're with right now is really important as you move forward into your careers. So yeah, I think that's probably good for now. I'm so hungry to get to questions, just because if you've got them, then it's a lot easier than me just rambling on about myself. So yeah.
Oh, Sarah, well, thank you so much. What a heartfelt, inspirational lecture that was, moving through everything that you've done and really working with your heart. It's just beautiful to hear.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth.
Oh, did I ever have a smile with the vegetable whisperer? I just
It's true. It's true. The cauliflower just talks to me.
It speaks to you. That's right. You listen to them. And I mean, if you're growing them right in your space, and you're seeding, you're harvesting, you're there throughout the whole stage of that growth, then you're absolutely connecting with them, right? They have an essence.
They do. But you can also connect to the cauliflower at No Frills. I'll just say that.
Yeah, wherever you're at, that's
wherever
right.
You're at.
Wherever you're getting those vegetables, you can make that connection. So, Sarah, you have become our vegetable whisperer. We will never forget that.
I love it.
Never forget that. Beautiful souls, we will move on to Q&A, but just to conclude Sarah's lecture portion, thank you, Sarah. You're
so welcome.
We love that. So thank you for that. So first we have Haley. She cannot express how moving this was. As of 2 days ago, her whole life was turned upside down. Oh. And so much of what Sarah said about felt like it was resonating so deeply. And her question is, if someone is looking for a mentor, how should they go about identifying who would be a best fit and how they could best reach out and connect to them?
Yeah, I think first I would ask around to people that you know and trust if they are working with someone. And if you can't find a connection that way, Google it and just start shopping around for someone. Again, it also just depends on what you're looking for. If it's a business mentor or if it's a life coach, there's so many different sort of paths to go down. So I would first just look within your own network to see if someone knows someone, because it's very likely they will. And if not, Google your city and mentors. And again, like, get really clear on what is specifically you're looking for. If it's business, personal, photography, food, whatever. Yeah.
Very beautiful. And if anyone has any other, we have lots of great feedback in the chat that's happening. Thanking you very much for your powerful words, the many opportunities out there that you discussed. Some of the participants today are finishing school, or they're in the midst, and they're in the practicum portion, so doing their co-op. Sarah, where did you do your co-op?
I did my co-op with Eva Kabaka at the Toronto Waldorf School, and it was really, again, so amazing because we're on the farm, and it's a biodynamic farm. So that was what really introduced me to biodynamic practices in the first place, which have become, part of my own practice. Caitlin she has a history in biodynamics as well. Just one of the reasons I hired her. I just felt like we were on the same wavelength. Yeah. And it was really phenomenal. I mean, we were really like down in the dirt every day, and we would do a little bit of cooking, but Eva is so knowledgeable, and I really, really loved my practicum. And what came out of that, interestingly, so Eva had written a cookbook, but she needed a designer, and it was through my co-op with her. She ended up hiring me. Oh my gosh, you have that is hilarious. Yeah. So I designed Eva's cookbook. Oh my God, I'm blushing. That's so long ago. I love that. Oh my gosh, there she is. Yeah. And the other one was the photographer. And we created her book together, and it's amazing. Like she's also a channeler. Like, she creates some of the most creative, nourishing recipes I've ever tried. She's still a huge idol to me. Like, I really bow to Eva. She's amazing. So if you can get in a class with her, do it. She is a power. She's straight source energy. It's amazing.
Yeah, Eva teaches Ayurveda.
Yeah.
He teaches nutrition in the environment, and then the holistic food prep classes. So that's really nice.
I also love nutrition in the environment. And I just, teacher just really resonated.
Beautiful. We have another question here. If you have any tips on paid collaborations.
Yes, I didn't actually talk about that, which I meant to touch on. So I started doing paid partnerships quite late. Again, like the food blogging, there was no goal with it other than just like sharing my knowledge. So because blogging was in its infancy, there were no brand partnerships at that time. And when it started coming in, even advertising, I was really like, I don't want to be sort of swayed by anyone else. I really wanted to keep, especially wanted to keep the space of my blog really clean, but I didn't want to have like any bias towards anything specific. But from a business standpoint, that wasn't very clever. So what I realized was that I actually did want to work with other companies. It just needed to be the right ones. And, if McDonald's approached me, I wasn't exactly going to, partner up with them. So it was really just about figuring out, okay, what's the type of business that I want to work with? And then either approaching those people, which is generally what you need to do if you want to get a partnership. But sometimes they come to you after you've built, a real brand and following. So I don't know if you have a more specific question about it, but I guess my focus is one, like just really aligning with the people that I feel that I would want to support. In fact, I'm working with Manitoba Harvest for the next 12 months, which is amazing because I already buy their products in the store. I love their hemp products. I'm a huge fan. So when they approached us to do a partnership, I was like all in. It's very exciting. So I'm doing recipe development and food photography and some social media content for them. I love working with them. It's a real honor. And other people we've approached, I have one brand, which is Breville, that I'm obsessed with their kitchen equipment, and we have been begging them for years for a partnership. They're just not interested. And so we should probably let it go, but I'm pretty tenacious. So it's like, it's this combination of being really clear on what you want, going after it, and then just also being open. Of course, price negotiations are a huge topic, and I won't go into the nitty-gritty, but you can look up essentially based on your following what you should make in a partnership. my goal is to always work with people where we have more of a longer term partnership. So 6 months to a year, as opposed to one-offs. And that's just because I really appreciate connecting and relating to people. And I think you create better products when you really understand a brand and the people behind it and what their mission is. So I'm all about relationships. I'm all about, these deeper connections and longer term work projects, because I just think it's more fun when you're engaged in, a deeper way. So that's what I'd recommend. And just stay true to yourself through that stuff. It can be a little challenging to navigate. It's really nice to have help and advice or a mentor for that stuff, but you also don't need it. I think if you really know what's important to you and the kind of brands that you want to work with, then it's going to be great. Yeah, just don't compromise.
Yeah. And we're looking for some information from an attendee who would like advice on how to find clients for clinical one-on-one work that you were doing early on in your career.
Yeah, so I used my existing network already. It's a little embarrassing to say, but because I was quite young when I graduated, I think I was 23 or 24. The friends in my group, they didn't really have the amount of money that was needed to support me. So I ended up going through my parents and their network of friends, who my parents have always been very, very social. They have a million friends, and I don't know, I guess my house was just always like, there's just so many people around when I was growing up. And so my parents' friends are very much like my family. And so my parents' advice was to just go around and sell my services to them. And so it took 2 clients from my parents' friend network, and then it was word of mouth. So I started seeing people that I didn't know after that, but it just took a couple people at the beginning, and it's amazing the ripple effect this has. My best advice is to get people, if you can, that have smaller health goals at the beginning, as opposed to seeing people, with any kind of terminal illness. And that's just because you want to get your footing at the beginning. So I was doing a lot of I had people who wanted to lose weight. Of course, I had people who maybe were dealing with a type 2 diabetes, insomnia, migraines, things like this. And that really helped me gain my confidence. And again, when you just help one person that's successful, you won't believe how it sort of spreads out from there. And I was turning people away at the end because I really realized I wanted to focus on, again, the food and recipe development more than the clinical practice. But yeah, from time to time, someone will write me an email and say, are you still in practice? Can I see you? And I will often just give them advice, especially if it's just through email. I personally, I just know that if you plant seeds, it's gonna spread. So just find a couple clients through your existing network who can afford the service, and then it'll take off for sure.
It'll take off. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you for that. And Josephine would like to know, is it possible to join the Italy retreat in 2024? Is there still...
It's sold out in 10 minutes.
That's sold out in 10 minutes. Okay. And you take 25, is that your max?
No, for Italy, it was just 10 participants. It was a very, very small retreat. It's very exclusive. So that's the retreats for next year. We do have, I think, if Caitlin can confirm this, I think we had a cancellation in Mexico in January. So maybe she can answer that. But Italy's definitely sold out. And then 2025 hasn't not been announced yet. So that'll come up soon. But I'm glad you're excited. I hope we get to see you someday. The retreats are amazing.
And Josephine is asking, how do you find or choose your retreat locations?
Yeah, great question. So I really love to be traveling in the world and find a place, because that's how the first few happened. But the one in Mexico, we actually found by Google mapping. We were actually looking in Costa Rica. But the issue with Costa Rica is most retreat locations are between 7 and 8 hours away from an airport. And because people are coming from Europe and Australia for my retreats, we're thinking that's going to just destroy people that last stretch. So Mikkel, my husband, and I, we were looking at Mexico, and we were sort of zooming in on the Puerto Vallarta area, and we saw this little spot pop up called Shinalani. And yeah, we just did a deep dive and it just looked incredible. So I did a site visit there before retreat, but we had already booked it, as a matter of fact. It was almost, I was just going to make sure that it was really great. And I got there, absolutely perfect. So yeah, it's Google mapping, like look at a region that you want to travel to, which is, yeah, I mean, how Italy happened. And yeah, just try and find locations there. Yeah, there's huge databases. If you go through a travel agent, so we have a travel agent that handles all of the bookings for the retreats. And because this is her specialty, she has a huge catalog of places. So I said recently, like, can we start looking at Greece? So she sent me like 100 retreat locations through the islands,
wow.
which was really fun to look at.
Yeah.
It's a great shopping experience, shopping for retreat locations.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a number of ways of going about it. There's even, if there's some retreat companies that also do work all over the world. So if you find them on social media, then you can find their locations through that, because they'll often be tagged. So that's another really good resource, is just looking at, okay, well, where do I want to go? Who has like a really solid retreat brand? And, you know, a lot of them are focused on health and wellness these days. So once you hone in on that, you can easily find locations through those people that have already been running retreats there.
Okay, great tip. Yeah. And it was very uplifting to hear that you healed your back through your diet and avoided surgery. Just obviously not getting into the micro level, but what would you say were some of the, you know, the top 3 to 5 changes that you made that really had an impact?
Well, it wasn't just food. It was a real myriad of things that I was trying. From a diet perspective, I started incorporating animal products back in. I was vegetarian for 23 years. And I started, first I was drinking bone broth. I was making my own chicken bone broth. And then as my body adjusted to that, I started craving the actual meat of the chicken. So then I started eating chicken. That was about 6 months. And then I really, even though I never in my wildest dreams thought I would get there, I finally started craving red meat. So I started incorporating that, and it's been, gosh, like really phenomenal. So I'm pretty regimented with the bone broth, especially. I really try and get it in every day if I can. And I think I just also needed more protein. I know at IHN, I don't know if you're still talking about the buildup and breakdown diet, but I realized, because I have a degenerative condition, it's called degenerative disc disease. That was sort of like the catalyst that caused the injury. I'd been eating a breakdown diet and I was in a degenerative state. So I was like, okay, I need buildup foods. And it's been a really fascinating journey. My body responded incredibly well. Everyone's always very curious about that. If I was sick or had digestive issues, I was like, nope. Every cell was like, thank you. It was really amazing. And yeah, it's not a huge part of my diet, but it's a very important one. I can really see how it's impacted me. I'm very lucky to live, I'm outside of the city, and I'm very lucky to live in a rural enough place where all my meat comes from like 10, 15 kilometers from my house. And I visited all the farms, and I know exactly what the animals are being fed and how they're being raised and how they're slaughtered and processed. So I feel very privileged to be that connected to the animals that I'm eating. And that was, I think that was a big block for a long time, was that I felt like, I mean, obviously commercial meat industry is, you know, can be really horrible. So I think the remedy for me and the helping me justify eating them was again, understanding the beautiful life that they really have before they are, before they go, before they're killed. So I feel, very, you know, honestly, more connected to the land here, more connected to this place that I'm in. And that's really beautiful. It's a sort of unexpected thing that came out of it. And the breath work was really huge. That's really helped a lot. I often say that it helped me be in my body at a time when I really wanted to run away from it. it's given me some really deeply profound spiritual experiences that have not only taken my pain away, but have really helped me see, I guess, a greater purpose for my life. And again, that's why I was led to get the facilitation certification. Resting. Resting was huge. I'm not a great rester. I really love doing things. And I felt like at the end of the day, I really needed to have something to show for it. Like, what did I create today? What did I do? And with this back injury, I was very limited in what I could actually do. So understanding, very basic principles of wellness, when you're injured, you rest. That's how you recover. I really struggled with that for a while until I surrendered to it. And I'm glad I did, because I think the resting was a huge part of that, is not denying that that's what my body needed anymore, but really accepting it. And yeah, it meant that I was laying down for, sometimes half of the day, but that's what my body needed at the time. So here I am to tell the tale, thankfully. I think mindfulness and attitude played a huge role in my recovery. I don't look back and think, I don't know, I guess I don't victimize myself in any way. I really knew, even at the lowest points and my darkest moments, that this was like an opportunity for me. And that's why I didn't have surgery when it was recommended. I really believed in my body. Like, IHN gave me this empowerment that made me believe I can do this. Of course, to a point, like sometimes surgery is really needed, but I just had a feeling that I could do it on my own. And I'm really glad I stuck to that, because spinal surgery will change your life forever. And yeah, I wasn't sure I was ready to go down that path. So it might be in the cards for me at some point, but for now, I'm really good. And being able to walk again is pretty great.
That's a dream.
Yeah, it is. It is a dream. I'm so lucky. I also worked really hard at it.
Yeah. And it sounds like it was over a year, right? You kind of did all this over.
The injury was 5.5 years ago, and it's been a year and a half pain-free. But before that, it was 4 years of chronic pain and a lot of stress. And just a situation I wouldn't wish on anybody. It was terrifying, to be perfectly honest. I just didn't know where my life would take me there. But yeah.
Well, beautiful. We're so happy that you turned all that around, and that's incredible, with the power of holistic nutrition and the lifestyle implications you made modifications to. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, I learned it all with you.
The body will always heal given what it needs.
Yeah. It does. It really does. And it's so funny. Knowing what I knew and having this resistance to it anyway. A lot of people come into IHN because of a health crisis. A lot of people come to holistic nutrition because they've had an experience where they want to get well again. And I didn't come to it from that perspective. So this was my moment, Elizabeth. This was my big challenge. And retroactively using what I've learned at IHN was really powerful. Like, I feel like calling up all those surgeons and telling them what's up.
What's up? Exactly. Look at me now. That's right.
Look at me now. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Thank you, Sarah. That was spectacular.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Just a couple more questions that we'll take from Sarah, and then we'll conclude today's session. So we have, what do you feel about e-newsletters? The person is saying they're very popular, but they're wondering if you have any recommendations for platforms, programs, workflow management, how to have a successful email distribution, or do you feel it's not necessary in this online world and focus more on one-on-one physical? I
think it's really important, actually. So our newsletter base, I think we have close to 40,000 subscribers, and our open rate is it's over half, which is huge. That's really, really high. Yeah. I think the newsletters are really key. And the way you build that is you need to have some kind of static website. So it's a blog or it's a landing page or whatever. And we at Mind Your Roots have really poured ourselves into the newsletter in the last year or so. We really changed things around. So if anyone who's listening has subscribed, you'll notice there was a big change, and our open rate is really high because the quality is there. In fact, right after this call, I'm going to dive deep into the next newsletter. And yeah, there's so many, first of all, from a template perspective, from a design perspective, so easy to get that online nowadays. Like Etsy has some really good ones, but just Google it. There's tons. It's really about like, how do you get the subscribers in there? And that's why it's really important to have just some kind of homepage that, gives people a sense of what you already offer. And of course, you can charge for the newsletter. Ours is free. I think that's, again, important for attracting people, but it just depends on who you want to attract as a client and whatnot. And yeah, I think because that's where you're going to be communicating with a lot of your audience. I do not undermine the essentialness of social media. That's key. Like I can't say that enough. And have a newsletter sign up through that as well. Like as many touch points people can have to get to that newsletter is great. But it's also, it shouldn't be the ultimate focus of your business. It's just like, how can you have as many touch points as possible for your brand, and what are you looking to achieve? It's an organic process, I'm going to say. It's not something that happens overnight. And you really need to offer people something of value. So whether or not that's a recipe, if it's links to some really good stuff, if it's discounts, we offer a lot of like my favorite products, but at discounted rates in my newsletter. So that's another reason people like to read it. But then there's health information, like things, again, that I still use from all my IHN textbooks. Guys, I still use those almost every day. Like Paul Pitchford's Healing with Whole Foods. Like that's, one of the best books I've written ever. So all that information, again, when you can sort of like distill it down and offer something that's chewable, like bite size, that's really meaningful to people. And then just keep it really personal. Like make sure that you're infusing it with your own warmth and energy, and people will feel that. Another huge takeaway is like when you are passionate about something, people are magnetized to that. And I am a living example of that. I can't believe what I've been able to attract in my life just by being who I am, by being my authentic self and just doing what I love. When people see someone doing something that they love, like that's super attractive. You're just like, what are you up to? I want to do that too. And it's the reason why I know that maybe even some of you on this call went to IHN is because I was like, IHN is great. So it's, just through any communication, whether it's newsletters or social media or whatever, it's just about being yourself and being turned on to something because it turns other people on. And then again, it ripples. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So extremely important. Absolutely. Yeah. And any advice on how to reach out to food companies for brand partnerships for recipe creation?
Yeah. Just write to them. You can DM them on Instagram. You can find out either through LinkedIn or maybe their website even. They'll have a breakdown of that. And it doesn't always work, but you got to start somewhere and just try it. Just start knocking on doors however you can. Form those networks and just, be really bold and be confident in yourself that you have something amazing to offer. Someone will bite. But again, this is why it's also really important, if that's something you want to start doing, if you want to be a recipe developer or food photographer or whatnot, it's really important that you have your own online presence in some way. It doesn't need to be big, but just a place where people can go and see what you're already doing. So the blog for me, that was great for years. Then I got onto social media because keep in mind, this was all before social media happened. So now people can go to my Instagram and very quickly they can get a sense of what I'm about. I think just with the images. And again, that's why imagery is so important. We're living in such a visual age, and really honing your skill in that way to create that brand and that identity that people will recognize. And that's one they want to work with.
Yeah. Beautiful. And Haley had a question. being a Canadian food wellness blogger, do you create more or less challenge as opposed to being American? It seems like a lot of the major brands doing partnerships are American brands, and I see less Canadian brands featured in partnerships.
Yeah, well, I haven't found any real blocks with being Canadian. I mean, the cool thing about the internet is that it is global. So I have, I've been working with, gosh, we have like a Japanese knife brand right now that we're working with. And we've got Manitoba Harvest, which is Canadian, but they actually have offices in the US. So it doesn't really matter. You can really approach anyone anywhere. And again, once you have this great thing to offer, brands will just want to work with you no matter where you're located or they're located, because you can also mail stuff. That's possible. So, I mean, from experience, American brands have a lot more power, especially just because their market is so much bigger. So they have more financing, and yeah, it's nicer to work with American brands, especially if there's like a Canadian offshoot. Like Breville, for instance, has that. I mean, there's obviously like Breville Global, and then there's US and Canada. And we've worked a little bit with Canada. But again, because they are under the umbrella of this larger company, they don't really have a huge, they don't have a huge budget. So yeah, if you want more money, you got to go to the big pond. And yeah, you're going to have more fish swimming with you. So you're going to have more competition. Again, this goes back to why it's so important to have a very clear, defined niche and aesthetic, and what sets you apart from other people. Because a brand, they might have 100 different influencers or people who want to write for them, but that's why it's important not to be like anybody else as much as you can. Obviously there's a lot of replication out there right now, but you just have to be consistent, persistent, keep trying. Yeah, that's my best advice. And just really like cold call anybody, send emails. Even if it's a template, you just keep sending it out. Eventually someone will get back to you.
Yeah. Well, Amy was asking about companies promoting templates and protocols. Do you think this is something worth investing in the beginning of our career?
Yeah, for sure. If that's something that, like, anytime you come up against something that you don't know anything about, or you're not good at, or you hate, delegate. Either find someone to do it or find a shortcut. And luckily, again, we're in this very digital world. There's so many shortcuts you can take online, templates, whatever, wireframes for sites. I mean, Squarespace is another amazing resource. Like, you can build a website in a day. It's phenomenal. Like, when I started, there was none of that. It's been such an uphill battle. But yeah, like, just figure out, the investment is so worth it, because when you think about how long it would take you in hours to do that same thing, it's 100% worth the investment, no matter what it is. I mean, you gotta weigh it out. Maybe it is something you're really curious about learning, but again, if you're trying to get a business off the ground, any foothold you can find is valuable. So it's worth the money for sure.
Okay. And our final question, looks like we're going to end in regards to breathwork. So Rosina is thanking you for all the valuable information and your enthusiasm. In regards to breathwork, what is some advice you have on how and where to start in breathwork? Like as a content. Yeah.
As a client. Okay. Well, start by actually doing it. Start by finding a platform that feels good to you. I hope you can check out Grow, because we've got some breathwork there. I will also recommend the Othership app. Othership it's a physical space in Toronto. It's a sauna and ice bath, and it's really phenomenal if you haven't been. They've just opened their second location in Yorkville, and then I think they're going to New York and Texas and whatnot. So it's a very cool company that started in Toronto. And they also have an app for breathwork, which is actually what really got me hooked on it in the first place, because the company is called Othership. Sorry, I probably said that quickly. So if you look at their app, if you get their app, it's a little pricey, but I think it's worth it. I think there's hundreds of different sessions on there, and it's all by length or style or intensity. And I think it's brilliant. So I still use it, even though I have my own breathwork app basically online. I still use Otherships because it's amazing. Caitlin, I don't know if we still have a discount code to that, but if you want to I don't know if we do, but we might. She can maybe find that. It's amazing. It's really amazing. So I would recommend that. And then I can also share with you that I did my facilitator training through Elemental Rhythm, and they're also Toronto based. And I did an in-person training in the summer. And then I think 8 weeks after that, it's calls and practicing and whatnot. So the certification is actually, it's not a super long process. It's an amazing thing, I think, to complement holistic nutrition, because honestly, so many people are stressed, and we can't really heal a body whose nervous system is dysregulated. Elizabeth, this was another piece I guess I should have mentioned, not just breath work, but nervous system regulation was really key to my healing. And breath work was a huge part of that, and mindfulness. So Elemental Rhythm is great. That's who I took the training through. And it's, again, nice that you can do it in person. So I think they do in-person trainings once or twice a year. They also run them in Costa Rica. So if you want to go down there, you can do that. But it's great. It's pretty simple. If you feel called to teach something, it's a really beautiful offering. And it's really it's still in its infancy. So I'd say it's a really great industry to break into, especially if you have both the holistic nutrition training and the breath work. Like, wow, it's such a powerful combination to really help support people in their health. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Bozena did some breath work in the Soul Shine Festival in Ontario.
Oh yeah, you went to that. I almost went. I almost went.
Yeah, she
That's
said
great. I hope she loved it.
Yeah.
It was probably with Elemental Rhythm, because the people that I took my training with often go to Soul Shine and teach breathwork. So it was probably that same crew. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Sarah, oh, that was just spectacular, love. It was so divine that you had this time with us. Thank you for carving this out and being with us today. It was so inspirational, informative, enlightening. You've given us a lot to think about. And thank you to everyone that attended with us here today. And Caitlin, thank you for being with us. And Sarah, it was absolutely spectacular.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. It's really my pleasure. Thanks to everyone in the comments I'm reading. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about Grow or anything we missed today, please feel free to email us. And yeah, you guys are on such a special path. You're going to change the world. Just, stay really true to yourself, stay passionate, stay open and curious. And yeah, it's very, very, very exciting.
Beautiful. And we're going to show this replay at 2 p.m. Pacific time for the Vancouver students that were not able to be with us live here today. So that will be shown today as a replay.
Great. Okay. We'll go to Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Bye, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.